Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Hey guys, gals, and anyone with sex organs. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Let's talk about sex, baby. I'm your host, Mariel, and today we're going to talk about lesbian sex. Lesbian sex. It's gonna be so hot. As the famous Salt and Pepper once sang, I mean, everyone should be making love. Come on. I couldn't agree more. Let's get it on. Let's get it on. How are we doing today? How are we feeling? What's going on in everyone's lives? I will tell you that I am currently in my closet of my childhood home where I had spent almost 18 years before coming out as a pansexual. And now I'm back. Right back in that closet. It feels scary, and it is scary, but it's going to be okay. Not to worry. I have an amazing podcast episode for you today. We're going to go so deep inside this topic. We're going to hit her cervix. Eventually. We're going to start off with the age-old question, how do lesbians even have sex? Is that even a thing? And it is a thing, I can guarantee you. But next is the amazing intricacies of lesbian culture, like dating, casual dating, U-hauling versus casual sex. And then I'm going to be answering some commonly Googled questions about lesbian sex, which are absolutely hilarious, by the way. And then, again, with that, I'm going to be giving some unsolicited advice, which is going to be absolutely hilarious as well. And then stick around towards the end of the show, the very last part of the show. I'm going to be giving you guys my top 10 positions. Yes, sex positions, not football positions, sex positions to make her come. And tried and tested, you guys. Tried and tested. It's amazing. It's going to be awesome. Let's get into it. So, lesbian sex. We all know what lesbian sex is. We've all seen porn. But, you know, when I'm talking about lesbian sex amongst queer women, it's important, just as a reminder, that when we say women, we are including our trans sisters, as well as our cisgendered sisters. This is also applied to our non-binary and femme friends out there, too. Again, we've all seen lesbian porn. We've all heard the fake moans, the high-pitched screech, the oh my god, I'm gonna come, oh my god. Trust me, it scares the living hell out of me. But you cannot tell me that you haven't seen it. I remember when I was 10 years old, I looked up girls kissing on my first generation iPod Touch. I will never forget that. I was in my bunk bed, my childhood bunk bed. It was crazy. It was hot. But watching generic lesbian porn now, I really don't get that feeling, you know? Something feels dirty. It feels kind of shameful. It doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. I mean, to give you guys an example, I quite literally watch lesbian porn right before I have sex with my partner, because it shows me exactly what not to do. It couldn't be more true. It shows me exactly what not to do. Lesbian porn is for everybody, but I feel like it can be an educational tool for young lesbians, or a reference for lesbian sex, which has its pros and cons, which we're going to get into. There's a whole world about it, which honestly deserves an entire other episode of this podcast series. I remember one of the first times I had sex with a woman. I was 19, and I was basically in a threesome, which kind of turned into just a twosome, which is just me and this woman having sex, but it kind of started off as a threesome. So the other woman was discovering her sexuality, and that's great. That's amazing. I too was kind of, discovering it, but she was more on the newer end, like really, really has never even thought about it. I think she was there for her boyfriend, which was the other male in the threesome. But it was truly one of the most awkward things I've probably ever experienced, because the reason being is the only reference I've had was lesbian porn I watched. Specifically, a video called Femme Lesbian Gets Slammed by Big Butch. I will never forget the title of this as I was watching it, because I had to pause. I had to take a beat, get some water, collect myself. The sex that these women were having was so aggressive that it actually frightened me. I was so scared. I was taken aback. I really was. I was scared the butch, quite honestly, was going to break the femme in half while she was fisting her like a jackhammer. And I was so scared. I was so scared. And there's nothing wrong with aggressive sex or fisting. There's nothing in fisting, as I hope we all know, quite literally means, inserting a fist into, an anus or a vagina. But kind of as you can imagine, my surprise when the sexual counter was quite literally nothing like the video I had watched. And let me paint you a picture here. So the room was silent, except for the soft noises of the sheets in the bed shifting, the palpable nervousness of everyone involved. I sized her up and thought, who's going to be the soft, girlish victim, and who's going to do the leg breaking? I figured I had long hair and she had short. I would definitely be the one in the chokehold, right? Well, I was wrong. I was very wrong. Awkward hands, light kissing, but here's the kicker. Here's the kicker of this whole thing. You're going to love this. She wanted to scissor. She wanted to scissor. And for all those who do not know what scissoring means, it's basically exactly what it sounds like. You have two scissors and you try to cut the scissors with each other. That's basically scissoring. Rubbing your clits together, rubbing your vaginas together in a, putting your legs together kind of like a puzzle piece. That's kind of what scissoring means. But flat out, I was like, what am I doing here? Help me. I've never had sex with a woman, let alone scissor a woman. I've never scissored a woman before. My palms were so sweaty. And I just remember there being like a pool of sweat above my upper lip. And I was like, okay, all right. I said a little prayer. I said a little sex prayer. And was like, heaven help me. This is going to be probably one of the worst things I've ever done. Let me tell you, it was absolutely awful. I just remember laughing during it because it was so unnatural. It was and uncoordinated. Again, you watch lesbian porn and they make it look so easy, but it's not. It's not easy. It takes so much core strength. I mean, you're putting together your legs and rubbing your vaginas and clits together. It's just insane. It just takes so much strength. But honestly, scissoring is like straight people 69ing. It doesn't happen often. It's funny to joke about and try once, and it can be hard to orgasm from it. The jury is out still on that one. I've heard so many mixed reviews about whether men and women like actually can achieve an orgasm from it, but I think it is so funny to watch. I just, same thing with 69ing. Scissoring. I just think it's so funny to watch because it's just, it just looks so uncomfortable and unnatural. But I do understand that a lot of people do, in fact, come from it. So if not scissoring, then what do actual lesbians do during sex? I mean, this is, this is a great question. A good place to start is obviously consent first. We all know this, but using what's already on your body is the perfect place to start. Fingering, fisting, fingering her anus, fisting her anus, fingering her vagina, like so many ways, all of which you have on your own body. Lesbians have on their own body. A lot of my friends who have had sex with women, and are trans, non-binary, cisgendered women, and everyone in between, who have had a lesbian encounter say that they love going to town on a vagina. They love going to town with their fingers and what they actually have on their body themselves. Toys are so fun, but the majority of the consensus that I've taken, and a lot of the research that I've actually done online, is like using what you have on your body it's just another thing. It's just another step. It's what's preferred. Getting to feel kind of that wetness of their vagina and how stimulated they actually are it's a really gratifying feeling. It gives you a sense of purpose, and it's like, oh, I made you wet. Now what's next? What are we doing next? Oral stimulation. So that's also another thing too. Lips, tongue. I don't recommend teeth. Teeth is kind of something that's like, biting on a clit right now just does not seem like it would be a good idea. I'm gonna say it. I don't think it's a good idea. But when I'm talking about oral stimulation, it's my favorite topic of the day. Like, getting to go down on a woman is a privilege, I believe, in my eyes. It's such an amazing feeling when you're able to perform oral sex on somebody. I feel like everyone can agree on this. It's a phenomenal feeling. Oral for lesbians can be as simple as spelling out the ABCs, honestly. Just A, B, C, D, all the way to Z and beyond. I feel like it really is amazing. But just no teeth. For the love of God, don't use your teeth. The clitoris is one of the most sensitive parts of the body. So why would you use teeth for this? I don't know. Again, the jury is also out for that one too. Lesbian sex also involves sucking on nipples. I cannot emphasize this enough. Nipples. Nipples are such an important part of the body. I mean, every part of the body is important, but nipples are so crucial during sex because you don't know, somebody could have a very sensitive nipple, especially for lesbians when working with kind of what the body already has. Nipples are a crucial part in kind of like getting her to completion or even just like arousing her in general. I feel like nipples are such an underrated part of the body. Clamping them, sucking on them, biting them, playing with them, just some of the ways that I feel like lesbians honor the nipple, really do. And pro lesbians out there, let me tell you, okay, pro lesbians out there, I have a lot of friends that are pro lesbians, and they consistently tell me that the way they do it is they suck on her nipple or bite her nipple, they finger her vagina, and they thumb her clit all at the same time, all in one motion. It really stimulates almost all of the senses, all of them, and it's just amazing. I've never heard a complaint. I think that I think in that act itself, it is so multifaceted. But the other one, honestly, I think the other one that's just really like no one talks about it enough is the anus. No one talks about anuses enough. I feel like it's reserved for only a very specific population, like gay men who use like anal and anal play as like a crucial or integral part of their sex life. Anuses for women are amazing. It kind of fosters the same kind of stimulation. At least for me it does. I think that the first time I tried anal play, I was absolutely terrified. Let me paint you a picture. I shaved everything on my body. Every single hair on my body. Every hair. And I doused myself in baby oil just to make myself, I don't even know, look good. I was just like, I'm hairless. I've got baby oil all over me. Let's go. Let's get this on. But it soaked through the sheets and it made me like slip and slide almost. And it was just so embarrassing because I was not only just soaking the sheets with my baby oil, but like this person had a very hard time like grabbing my body without just their hands slipping right off like a slip and slide. But I made sure I dozed. I made sure that lube was very apparent, but the baby oil, like, why do I need to do that? I don't know. Super weird. But I also was super worried that something would come out, something would come out of my butt, something would come out of my anus. I was so worried about it that it kind of prevented me from really enjoying my time, I feel like. But after I got that all like situated, it was amazing. It was probably one of the faster times that I've been able to come. I think, I don't even know, I was like 6 minutes flat. It was just amazing. It was anal stimulation with vaginal stimulation with like kissing and touching. And it was just, it was an amazing experience. And I think now every time I have sex with my partner, it's an absolute must have. I absolutely need to have that somewhere in there. Whether it's a butt plug, which can be helpful to achieve orgasm with the size of actually hitting your pleasure senses. Butt plugs can be larger, they can be smaller, and they can be the size of a finger. But I think for something if you're looking for something larger, obviously dildos and like actual anal could be good. If you're like me, you don't know anything, you want to start it off with something, having like a finger just slipped in there is amazing. But specifically for lesbian sex, I feel like, I know that a lot of my friends engage all of those senses. So in turn, it's amazing. But one of the last things that I actually forgot was kissing. Lesbian sex can be so simple, gets so complicated at sometimes. It's really kind of however you want to make it, Kissing is the simplest act, but it's so beautiful. It can, it can really, really turn somebody on in such a really beautiful way. Lesbian sex isn't taboo. It isn't something crazy that we don't know anything about. It's just sex. It's really just sex. Simple as that. It's intimacy between two or more partners, however many partners lesbians want to have, engaging in all parts of the body, stimulating nipples, engaging with anuses, clits, vaginas, using toys or fingers or tongues or your mouth or anything they want, really. So we talked about what lesbians actually do during sex, but what do lesbians even do to pick each other up at a bar? Like, what is that even like? Who approaches this? Stick around after the break. We're gonna go on a quick break. I'm gonna replenish my drink. Hopefully you will too. But I'm gonna break this step by step. I'm gonna break it down. And we're going to talk even more about the lesbian sex and history, which are super interesting, and what a U-Haul lesbian is, which is so funny. It's such a funny term. I feel like I'll say it, I think I'm a U-Haul lesbian, but all of that after the break. Stick around.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Hey guys, gals, and everyone in between. Thank you so much for joining us back from the break. You're listening to the GSMC Sex Podcast. I hope you had a chance to grab a snack, maybe a drink or three. When we left off, we had just finished talking about what actual lesbian sex is, using fingers, tongues to stimulate all parts of the body, how generic lesbian porn can be misleading to new lesbians, and how scissoring is a lot like when straight people 69. Again, useful to some, but can be hard to climax from. And don't forget to stick around to the end of the show. I'm going to be telling you my top favorite 10 positions. Top 10 favorite positions to make a girl come. Guaranteed. So we talked about how lesbians have sex, but let's dive into hookup culture. Casual sex versus U-Haul lesbians. Hookup culture for lesbians back in the day, for obvious reasons, was extremely private. Way, way, way back in the day, about 630 BCE, a woman named Sappho was born on the Greek islands of the Aegean Sea. She was a poet for her whole life, but most of her work was obviously destroyed, intentionally, I believe, because she wrote about loving women. A lot, not necessarily about sex, but being around women, near women. Many historians believe that she was in fact a lesbian. I think that she's a lesbian. I 100% think so. But the word Sapphist, popularized in said Victorian era, and also now, was born from her name, which is, I think, fun to think about. A Sapphist is someone who is a woman loving women. Just a women loving women. Basically, aka being a lesbian. 19th century lesbians were really only accepted into the culture when it came to hiding their relationship. So it was really only acceptable when they were just friends. So, which is funny, but they really tried to hide their hookups, which honestly can be compared to the 21st century because this happens all the time. But having sex with another woman was considered lawless. It was breaking the law and super shameful, to say the least, during the 1800s. But a handful of women in the public eye did come forward and declared their relationships out loud, according to Wikipedia. Charlotte Koosman, an actress, and the sculptor Emma Stubbins. Lesbian sex worked its way into the art scenes. It really did. All around the world in a pretty hardcore kind of way. By making it a permanent theme in print art throughout the 19th century. Most notable, and my favorite, was Katsushika Hokusai, Young Pine Saplings, 1814 in Japan. It depicts two women in a sexual act with a double-edged dildo. It is absolutely amazing to see. Truly a pleasure to the eyes to watch and to look at. I would love a huge print of that in my house ASAP. I want like a 12 foot by 12 foot. I don't even know if that's a thing that you can get printed out, but I want it. You know, lesbianism and lesbian sex has been around truly since the beginning of time. Only a few brave souls have come out and actually, like, been public about it, you know, really spoken out about having sex with women. Now in the 21st century, truly it's no surprise that other women you can go to the bars and have casual hookups and really pick each other up, you know. There used to be this thing in the mid-70s, I believe it was in the 60s and the 70s, is a thing called hanky codes, flagging, or flagging, if you will, where women and men would wear handkerchiefs on their pants, or pretty much on their pants, or on their shirts, to symbolize what they were into for casual sex. So according to Wikipedia, instead wearing a handkerchief on the left side of the body, it would indicate that you're a top, and on the right side, it would mean you're a bottom. So a top versus bottom, a top means you're into giving pleasure, a bottom is receiving pleasure. Again, neither one is a bad thing. I think being a top or a bottom is absolutely up to you. You can also be verse as well. So it's funny because the different colors actually mean different things too. So a red bandana meant you're into fisting. An orange bandana, geez, I need my coffee, meant anything goes. And a gray would mean bondage. So of course there were just some of the many handkerchiefs a lesbian or gay man would wear just to indicate what they'd be kind of into, just as a kind of public but private kind of way, you know. There are lesbian bars all around the world, truly all around the world. And sometimes they may not look like it on the outside, but definitely on the inside, they let their flags fly, truly. It's one of the better things to go to. Being surrounded in an environment where you have everybody who is from every part of the LGBTQ plus community it's an amazing feeling. But the hookup and the pickup culture behind it is honestly similar to straight culture. Cruising, which is essentially like when straight people cruise, is just walking around the bar, you know, figuring out who's open, who's not open, and really just diving into it, really just getting into it. It's really popular nowadays for casual sex because of how popular casual sex is. I remember when I was 21 years old, not even a week after my birthday, I went to my first real lesbian bar, casual funds. It was amazing. It was one of the best nights of my life. But the music was amazing. The drinks were amazing. The women, absolutely gorgeous. It was so much fun. But it was a lot to handle because there was just so many women everywhere. I've never been in a space like that before, where I've been surrounded by like-minded people. You know, being a pansexual, you're kind of just into anything and everything. But for this specific time, I was like, I'm going to find a female identifying person. I'm going to find one. So there weren't any men hitting on, you know, women for drinks. It was mainly just a lesbian night. That's what the club wanted that night, was a lesbian night. So I went up to dance with this just amazing, tall, brunette, beautiful woman. She looked like she could just absolutely tear me in half. And for that, at that time, I did want that. So I asked her to dance, and she immediately rejected me. But that's okay. I was sad, but I now knew how men felt, you know, when they just get that immediate sting of rejection. You really just got to pick your head up high, walk away, say thank you, I appreciate it, and just walk away. I was so like, oh, she doesn't want to dance with me. That doesn't mean she doesn't even want to have sex with me, let alone does she want to dance with me. But it was so quick. It was just like a viper. I was like, damn, my gosh. I was shocked. But I walked away, collected myself, and I eventually found another lady of the night. I found another woman. And I went home. We enjoyed each other for the night, and she called me an Uber in the morning, and I got up, picked my stuff up, and I did the walk of honor. Not the walk of shame, the walk of honor. It was an amazing night, and it deserved that walk. It really did. I think that sometimes people that are unfamiliar with the world that is lesbian sex, I think they forget that women flirt just like men do. Women get rejected just like men do as well. Women shoot their shots. Women shoot their shots just like men do. It's really the same game out here. But I think the one thing that is different for lesbian sex culture is protection, aka contraceptives. Unless a lesbian, I feel like, is having sex with a trans female or someone who with biologically male sexual parts, it is impossible for a lesbian to get pregnant. I'm gonna say that right here. I think I've read my books well enough that a sperm and an egg gets you pregnant, but an egg and an egg, we're not there yet. I don't think it's there yet. Though lesbian contraceptive does look a little different, dental dams and disinfectants, it's still important. Lesbians can still contract a myriad of sexually transmitted diseases like herpes, genital warts, chlamydia, just from exchanging bodily fluids, especially when you're scissoring. When you're rubbing your vagina against each other's vaginas, bodily fluids get all up in there, and herpes, chlamydia can happen. It happens. But to limit the spread of this, dental dams are always a possibility. They're flavored. Some of them are flavored. Some of them are multicolored. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. These wonderful things they were first invented, you guessed it, for dental purposes. Hence the name, to protect the teeth from contamination during surgery, yada yada. But repurposing of this dental dam wasn't until during the AIDS crisis, where protection, you needed to protect yourself. There was this heightened sense of, awareness about sexually transmitted diseases, and due to these physical fluids that they share between each other, that's kind of what happens. It's just what happens. But that can be casual sex. But if you have a long-term partner, such as U-hauling, which is the next thing we're going to get into, it's a different story. Probably one of the funniest things about lesbian culture, I should say funnest, not funniest. It's not necessarily funny to laugh at, because I don't think it's funny to laugh at, but I think it's funny. I think it's like a fun thing to know, is U-hauling. Lesbian culture is the ability to form these intense emotional connections right away from each other. I would like to add, I believe that a reason why lesbians do this is because of the inability to form those kinds of relationships in their younger years growing up, because when they were in the closet. I feel like psychologists may back this up, but I don't know yet. Again, the jury is out. But I think I might be hitting something. It's more serious than I'd like to get, but here we are. I think this ability to form such intense emotional and physical connections, like when you have a first date with somebody, is part of a lesbian culture. You have this just amazing, ecstatic relationship between each other, not even knowing each other for a week. You're planning the house, you're planning the kids, you're planning everything. Everything. From personal experience and from what my friends have concurred with me, it's a thing. It's such a hair-raising thing. You just immediately start planning your future together, and I think it's hilarious. I currently been with my partner for a little over 7 months now. For those months, we've lived together, and it's one of the funniest things I've experienced in my dating life so far. Catch this. I dated a man for 8 months. Back when I was like 20, I think. He would come to travel and see me, but he would never stay the night. Never stay the night. Never. We would hook up and do everything in between the sheets, but would never stay over. And I begged him, like every weekend for 8 months, begged him to do this. I went over to his house. We couldn't sleep in the same bed together. It was just very awkward. I even met his parents, his mom and his dad, 7 months in, and said, I love you in 8. I said, I love you at 8 months. Fast forward a few years, I'm dating my current partner. We've slept together the first night we met. I stayed in her bed. We got breakfast in the morning, and it was one of the best nights of my life. And we started dating and were girlfriends at 1 month. Said I love you at 3 months. Moved in the 4th month. And are thinking about getting a cat at the 7th month. So if that doesn't tell you something about how lesbian relationships move, or how sapphic, women-loving women relationships function, I do not know what to tell you. I think things happen so quick in a lesbian relationship, it's insane. Obviously, that's just from my personal experience, but for the lesbian community, it's common. It's welcome with open arms. Coming up after the break, I'm going to answer some of your most commonly Googled questions about lesbian sex and give advice to young adults coming out. So exciting. But please do not forget to stick around to the end. I'm going to give my top 10 sex positions guaranteed to make her come. This is tried and tested. My partner can attest to this. I'm so excited. Please stick around. I will see you soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Sex Podcast. I, as always, am your host, Mariel. I hope that we are doing well still working on finishing the rest of those drinks. Before the break, we talked about a lot about lesbian sex through famous artwork, casual hookups and contraceptives, and U-Haul lesbians. So exciting. I will be answering some of the commonly Googled questions about lesbian sex and lesbian culture, as well as providing some helpful tips for all the lesbians out there who don't quite know what they're doing in bed. Let's dive into it. Let's get into it. How do you know if you're a lesbian or bisexual? What a wonderful question. What an absolutely beautiful question. It's hard for me to answer this, but also easy for me to answer this. I started off with being bisexual, dating both men and women, then to threesomes, and then dating women, and then identifying as a pansexual woman, which really means you like everything that moves. Everything that moves, you're like, I'm into it, let's do it, let's get it on. If it feels right dating men, then date men. If it feels right dating women, date women. I don't think anyone is 100% straight or 100% gay. There is a thing called a Kinsey scale, which was developed by this couple in 1940s to determine what percentage of gay or straight you were. But when in doubt, try it all out. There's nothing wrong with dating around and finding what you like and what you don't like. At least I don't think so. Someone asked on a subreddit called Ask a Lesbian, which I think is funny. I follow that subreddit. What is lesbian deathbed? So I recently figured this out because I did Googling for this episode, and I was on Reddit and was like, what is deathbed? What's that? And I'm scared of it. I'll tell you that. I'm very scared of it. It essentially means when the sex life that lesbians have is just no longer existence. The chemistry in bed is no longer there. It is done. Done. So it essentially is like asking, when do lesbians get tired of having sex with each other? And when does the sex start going south? I think this obviously is 100% subjective. I think sex can go in and out of any kind of relationship, straight, gay, it really doesn't matter. But I think that one of my friends who's been in a 10 plus year relationship with her partner, she says that listening to your partner and always accepting their flaws and never putting her on a pedestal is as just the bare minimum of what you can do to escape lesbian deathbed. I think trying new things, like experimenting with partners, possibly having an open relationship, I think that there's so many ways to explore kind of what you're looking for, in sex, but it first starts out with communication. You can really try anything. I think that when you're in a relationship with somebody who is closed-minded, especially for lesbians, when you're in a lesbian relationship with somebody who's closed-minded, it can kind of seem like an oxymoron. Like you're with somebody who is open-minded about their sexuality, but not open-minded about their sexuality as well. I mean, everyone has their preferences, but it can be kind of an oxymoron, honestly. But having someone who's closed-minded, who is in an openly gay, an openly lesbian relationship is daunting. And I think that if they're not going to change, then they're not going to change. Then it's more important to move on than it is to change a person, because you don't want to go in changing a person. I think another commonly Googled question, which I've clearly done some research about this, is, do lesbians get offended if men watch lesbian porn? I know that we talked about this a little bit earlier in the episode, but I think that men enjoying lesbian porn is perfectly fine. I think that once the men start seeing women as a sexual object and never truly being capable of seeing them as like somebody that could form significant bonds outside of sex, I think that's when it starts to be a problem. I know that for me, I've kind of had that kind of internalized homophobia. I thought it was completely unnatural for a woman to be with another woman romantically. Sexually was fine, but romantically, it just didn't sit well with me. To this day, obviously, I struggle with this. Just, even having a partner, I still struggle with it. Because sometimes I kind of think, is it even a valid relationship to be in with a woman? Is that even like a thing? Does that even happen? But obviously, it still does. It's a lot of internalized homophobia, I think. I interacted with the LGBTQ group for the longest time, and it was only men. It was a lot of gay men. So when I'm saying like gay marriage, I'm like, oh yes, between a man and a man, totally do it. Like, I'm all down. I'm for it. I'm here for this. But then when it came to women, I was like, why? I was like, well, there's no point. You guys just have sex. But a lot of that is just my internalized homophobia. I will say it right now. It wasn't until I started actually dating women and being in a long-term relationship where they called me out for treating them like a friend, for treating them like a man, honestly, instead of a girlfriend. And that kind of like rocked my world pretty severely, honestly. It hit me hard when I realized that treating my old partners like they were men in their relationships, because that's really all that I knew. I didn't know any better, but also that's not really an excuse. Learning now from my mistakes in being in relationships with women lately, I think recognizing that and communicating that and realizing that we all kind of have a little bit of internalized homophobia. We all do. It's from the media. It's from where we were born. It's how we were raised. It just makes sense, you know? I think that it's a product of our environment, and it's something that we can all overcome eventually. I really do. And the next question I see popping up on my Reddit is, does using a strap-on mean you are craving the real thing? This is such a complex question because on one hand, lesbian sex does sometimes involve penetration with a strap-on, which is a traditionally masculine thing. But we're kind of throwing all the traditional aspects out of the window when we're talking about the LGBTQ plus community and their experience. Really nothing is traditional about that. What is traditional about that? I think lesbian sex in no way, shape, or form requires penetration to be labeled as sex. I really don't think so. From example that I gave you before, simply kissing and playing with her nipples, as, you know, lesbian on lesbian, so to speak, kissing and playing with their nipples or playing with even their anus, I think could be something that's really, really a beautiful thing. And that could even just be sex in and of themselves. You don't need to have penetration. I think that craving penetration from your partner in a lesbian sexual context would involve pushing men out altogether, never adding them into the equation. Women who actively choose women to have sex with don't want to be with men, nor their penis or anything that's attached to them. That's what being a lesbian is, as we've talked about. It's women loving women. Some women are even repulsed by the sheer nature of men's sexual bits, but still want to be penetrated by their partner. There's so many ways that you can go about this. But I think one of the bigger questions, again, and moving on to this, is, do you care about a smelly or unshaved vagina? I have a lot of stories about this. I have a lot of feelings about this too. I think that it always tickles my fancy when someone asks me about this. It's such a simple, intricate question, yet it requires so many explanations. Vaginas are not supposed to smell like daisies or roses, and if they do, throw out your product as soon as you can. Throw it in the garbage, crush it up, never use it. Soaps marketed towards women's vaginas and the odors that go off and the assumption that we are so completely turned off by them is wrong. It really is. It's wrong. They just want to eliminate all of the smells together, which is absolutely not true. You can't just eliminate your odor. We have vaginas. They smell. So what? A lot of women are sold this idea that odor is bad. Odor is just an odor, honestly. If it smells more than usual, go to the doctor, track your progress, track, your discharge. But normally, vaginas smell like vaginas. They do. Sorry to break it to you. I learned the hard way, and I'll tell you why. I bought a product for my vagina at Target and used it for an entire year straight. There wasn't a day that I didn't use it. I consistently used it twice a day. I use the underwear sprays, the wash. I use the wipes on the go. The whole thing. My poor vagina. Oh my God. She was like, please help me. I'm so sad. And I'm like, oh my God, vagina. I'll call her Betty. Betty the vagina. Oh my God. Are you okay? Like, what's happening? And she's like, you've been using products on me. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I've been using products on her. Betty. Oh my God. So my labias were dry. They were dry. My clit was dry. It felt like putting toxins in my body. If you're worried about smells and what you're having when you're having a sexual encounter, just wash your vagina with a washcloth, some hot water and a washcloth. Just wipe it off and you're good to go. It's too much. Don't use products. Please. Please don't. But in terms of shaving, I can tell you also a horrible story. I had a few years back, when I was a youngin', I was going to go hook up with this girl. I was so nervous that she wasn't going to like me. So I just shaved my entire body. This is different from the anus story, by the way, because on 2 separate occasions I have shaved my body completely hairless, almost completely. But this is different. I just shaved it all. And when I tell you the rash that I had after was insane. I couldn't walk. I think actually, what's funny? So I shaved my entire body, shaved it dry. And, we had sex, but afterwards, we went on a walk. And let me tell you, I had to crab walk up the stairs of my Chicago apartment in July because I shaved my entire body. Wrong, by the way. I shaved it wrong. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't, but I shaved it wrong. And I still, to this day, as a 20-something-year-old, I don't know how to shave my vagina. Maybe I'll do like a segment about that because I really don't know how to, and I also would like to learn. But nevertheless, I crab walked up the stairs, red all over my vagina, red marks all over it, and it was so uncomfortable. It took me like 2 weeks to like properly heal. So much chub rub, so much flakery, buttery. It was awful. It was awful. But I think moving on to the final question, the most Googled question about lesbian sex is, do lesbians feel the need to fit into a masculine or feminine role? Who's a boy and who's a girl? Who's the boy and who's the girl? I don't know. I still am questioning this. I'm still, my internalized homophobia is like ding 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 ding. I'm the boy and she's the girl. I still don't know what to think about this. I always laugh at the question, and I still think to myself about this. There's actually a really funny trend going on social media where lesbians post baby lesbian pictures of themselves, like directly after they came out, and it's hilarious. They're still trying to find themselves in the stereotypes that make up lesbians. Like, it really could go either one of 3 ways. I will tell you. You can be either completely fluid, just completely fluid with your gender, like looking like neither male nor female, masculine nor feminine, just very much in between. So you can either be super masculine or super feminine. It's like directly coming out. And I will tell you, I was definitely the fluid one. And I can tell you this also, my partner, when directly after she came out, super feminine. It's very feminine, very long brown hair. I just think it's funny. I looked at the photograph of myself, or I looked at a photograph of my friend, I should say. And she just looks femme as hell. It's so funny. But I think everything needs to be texted out. Try dating a masculine woman, see how it feels. See where you fit in. Develop yourself outside of your partner. Grow a style, that doesn't have to be masculine or feminine. Do whatever you want because it's your body. No one needs to be masculine one and no one needs to be the femme one. You define yourself however you want to be. All that empowering stuff said, we have our last topic of the day after the break. It's how to make a girl come. 10 different ways, guaranteed. This is some empowering stuff right here. And I almost shed a tear reading this Kama Sutra stuff. I swear to God, I almost shed a tear. I'm like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen so many beautiful sex positions with women. It's so damn beautiful. Finish that snack, refresh your drink, sit tight. I'll be right back after the break.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. It's me, Mariel. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast as well. Please, it really helps us out, and you will also be given notifications as to when we have our next episode coming up. I know that we all have been waiting for this one. I promised, and now I absolutely will deliver. The top 10 sex positions to make her come. Since this podcast episode is about lesbian sex, I will be referencing and referring it to as women on women only, sapphic only. But it really does apply to everyone out there, I promise. So, number 10, the backward spoon. If you can imagine what this looks like, a backward spoon, it is the female using a strap-on and penetrating the woman as her hips are pressed upwards while she is enjoying herself with a vibrator. He is on his knees and she is on her back, and her hips are placed upwards so that it can be able to hit the G-spot easily. It is amazing. It feels so good. And using a vibrator for this is probably one of the best options. Penetration can be super hard sometimes on the female body, and using something to kind of ease that, like lube or even a vibrator on the clit itself, is phenomenal. Okay, the next one, number 2, the steam room. This one, I love this one. This one kind of involves like a detachable head, detachable shower head, which if you don't have it, no worries. You can always use water and water play somewhere else. But the woman will stand behind the other woman, the one receiving the pleasure, will be kissing and stimulating her nipples, pulling her head back, maybe pulling her hair even. And the woman receiving the pleasure will be using the shower head on her vagina or on her clit. Circular motions, up and down motions, side to side. There's so many ways that you can go about it. You can also change the intensity of the shower head itself if you have one of those. I do not have one of those, but I do have a very hard shower head. It is like a massager if you use it on your back. It is so intense. So scooting your way back for people who, maybe don't have a shower head, you can lay on your back in your bathtub with your partner. Lay on your partner. And you can then use the water from the shower, position your vagina to where it kind of flows with the water to where the water gets on your vagina itself. And have your partner stimulate your nipples, kiss you, rub you kind of all over. That's kind of an alternative way for this steam room. Number 3, the eagle. This is also a very, very famous lesbian position. Not necessarily the spread eagle, but the eagle for sure. A woman will be laying on her back and with her knees up, legs apart, somewhat apart, not fully apart, but kind of clamping around her head. And the other woman will be just absolutely getting down and dirty. Oral sex galore here. Her legs will kind of be, wherever she wants to be, whatever position is best for her. But this can be for hours and hours and hours on end. Absolutely hours on end if you want it. There's really no limit to this, by the way. There's really no limit. I really like that one because it gives you a little bit more of an intimate position with your partner, where your partner can kind of look up at you, while you are enjoying her, while you are enjoying eating, oral stimulation. The next one is the pushing the cushion. This one I like a lot. So both are on knees. Both you and your partner are on your knees. Your partner is wearing a strap-on. Say you are in the receiving position here. It's kind of how I like to describe it. And if you're not, that's totally fine. I can always switch it up. You could be in the giving position. So say you are, you have a strap-on or you have a dildo of some kind. You are facing her back. So her back is up and curled, kind of right onto yours. And you are, it's in a way doggy style, but it's more like you're holding her up by her breasts or by her hair. And you are kind of just really thrusting, whatever you have into this woman. Again, lesbian, we're talking about lesbian sex here. So it really can be kind of whatever you want to. Again, a lot of these positions and a lot of these things, they work with men and women too. Really lesbian sex and straight sex, cis sex, lesbian sex and straight sex, it's a lot alike. It's just a little different. Just a little different in some ways. I think we're on the 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we're 5. I think we're on the 5 position. Sorry, I lost count. The up and over. So the up and over position. Love this one as well. I mean, all of these positions I love. That's why I added them. That's why I added them in the top 10. Let's be real. So say you are in the receiving position. So your legs would kind of be, you would be laying on your back and your legs would be up in the air in kind of like a missionary position, but your legs would be up in the air. Your partner would be inside of you at this point, kind of in a way where they would be laying on their stomach, and so your hands wrap around their back. So this is kind of the up and over position on the floor, or on a blanket, or on a mat, or a towel, or kind of however you want to go about this. This is kind of a very basic one. It's a different twist on the missionary style position to, achieve orgasm. All of these positions, by the way, that I'm talking about, they can all be better. They can all be enhanced with nipple play, with anal stimulation, with lube, with music. I mean, the sky is the limit at this point. You really can do whatever you want. Sex is fun. It's supposed to be fun. And you can add as much or as little as possible. So the next one I like, which I believe is 6, the sit and straddle. I love the sit. I love the sit and straddle. It's one of my favorite ones. And I know I say that about all of them, but I do like this one a lot. I practice one a lot with my partner. Your partner will be sitting, and they will either have a dildo or they can have their fingers, or kind of whatever they're into, but they're sitting down with their legs out, and you or whoever else, in this case, let's say that it's you, you will be sitting and straddling them, but facing them. So it's not reversed. It's not in the other position, but you are sitting and facing them, kissing them very intimately. You're playing with their nipples. They're playing with your nipples. I think what I want to mention again is at any point during your sexual exploration or, your sexual encounter with your partner or whoever it may be, it's important to note that you can switch positions at any time. There is no, set in stone wherever you have it. You don't need to be top or bottom. It kind of really is however you want to make it. So the next position, which I believe is the 7th, is the goddess. The goddess. That one's hot. That's a hot one. I'll say it. So your partner, she's laying down, not in a tabletop position, but she's laying on her back, or you're laying on her back. Or sorry, she's laying on her back and her knees are up. You are facing towards her knees and you're sitting on her face. That to me, that one, I know a lot of people that do it, and they say that they have achieved one of the best orgasms from that. The simple pleasure of clitoral stimulation with vaginal stimulation together is absolutely amazing. I mean, your partner, her hands are kind of free at this point, so she can be doing anything. She could be sticking her fingers in your mouth. She can be pulling her hair, or she could be pulling your hair. She could be kind of, doing kind of whatever she wants with her hands, or even her legs, if that's what you want. The next one is the elevator. Can we pause? What are we at?
11 minutes.
Fuck.
You still have to edit it. So it's going to take a few minutes out.
No, but I want 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. Are you almost done?
I'm like 2 positions away from being done.
You got it.
Okay. I'll just talk about it. Okay. And resume. The elevator. This is our 9th position. The goddess was the 8th. The elevator is the 9th. One of the things that I love about this position is kind of honestly how dominant it is. One of the things that some women do love with their partners, again, we're speaking about lesbian sex here, some of the things that women would love doing with their partners, especially in the elevator, especially with this elevator position, is using a dildo and having them kind of perform, oral sex on that dildo itself. It's a very interesting sensation because you can't feel anything. The dildo is not necessarily attached to you, but it is a simple act of that kind of submission, that kind of performance, really, that really is stimulating to a lot of women. It's not oral stimulation to the dildo, it's more the performance of it. It's really just an additive. But the elevator, and what this position is a woman is sitting on her knees and the other woman is standing up. So she is in turn performing oral sex on her while she is standing up. So she can her head can either be tilted back and the other woman is enjoying herself by rubbing her vagina against her mouth, which is amazing. But in having a dildo, it's kind of that added performance. It's just another thing to really, really spice it up. But in terms of actually making her come, inserting a finger in her anus or a butt plug, like we talked about, those things during the elevator are super accessible because you're able to wrap around your arm and kind of be able to, stimulate her anus and kind of do that while also being able to perform orally on her clit or her vagina. So it's kind of like a best of both worlds. So the next one and the last one is the lovely Iron Chef. What a lovely position, this one. It's the 10th one. Doesn't mean that it's the 10th one, meaning that it's the worst or the best, but it is, or it's number 1, I believe. Either way, there are 10 positions here. I might have messed up the order, but I love it anyways. I think it makes a lot of sense to me. The Iron Chef being number 10 or number 1, whichever one we started with, and that's okay. Mistakes happen. The Iron Chef. A woman is laying on her back, and this is on a table because what do Iron Chefs do? They work on a table. A woman is laying on her back. Her hair can be quite literally wherever she wants it to be. But the importance is that the woman is performing a sexual act on her with a dildo or with her fingers. The important point is that her butt is hanging off of the table, which means that you're able to get the stimulation from said finger or from said sexual a penis or a dildo, or penis including dildo. So the Iron Chef itself is amazing because it really allows you to hit that G-spot. So there you have it. There are just some of my 10 positions to make her come. I tested all 10 of them. I really love all of them. One of my favorites is the sit and straddle. I'll say it. It's intimate, it's hot, and it really gets you there. I had so much fun today. I love sharing all my personal and intimate stories for all the public to hear. It really makes me feel good about knowing, it just really feels good knowing that my first grade teacher can look up my name and listen to me talk about sex. Honestly, I think she'd be proud. I really think she'd be proud. I do this for the listeners and to make people laugh, because sex is what? Fun. Sex is fun. All right, guys and gals and everyone in between, thank you for listening to the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask you to please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That would really help us. It would make me happy. It only makes me a better host. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much, and have a great night. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.